I have the pleasure to introduce you to one of the most amazing, wonderful men in Latino comedy, Mr. Rudy Moreno.
Si agarra, está esa mulata. Ay, mamita, caminando. Dale un poquito para acá.
You really have done a lot for Latino comedy in Los Angeles.
Thank you.
Just straight out, I mean, you've been consistent. You have nurtured a lot of young Latino comedians coming up, and you've never asked for anything.
I thought when I started there was only a couple of other Latino comics, and then I went with Gilbert Esquivel. Took me to the Comedy Store, and there was like 900 other Latino comics. I was like, and then there was female Latino comics too. So this was something because I had worked in an area just where there was just a couple of guys. I thought it was just me, Paul Rodriguez, George, and then I met Gilbert. I go, okay, now there's 4 of us.
What made you want to start doing comedy?
I was always funny as a kid, and I was a class clown as usual. You know, most comics are. And I was working at the gas company, and I was working in the field, and so I hurt my back. And a friend of mine who was a musician, they had a band called Tierra.
Yes, very big band.
Yeah, they had a big hit. And so he tells me, because he was from the same area, he says, dude, you should be a comedian. And then I said, I'm 33 years old, but I got a job, I got a family, I got kids. He says, no, you should really open for the band. Oh, okay, so I went up there, did everybody else's material, and then it just bit me. And then just started, one thing after another started happening. I was opening for this band, I was opening for this comic, and then, TV started coming around. So now I just left that job. Well, I didn't even tell him, I just left, and then just started doing this for a living, and it's been great. It's been almost 30 years now, it's 28 years.
As you were starting to do stand-up, what made you decide that you wanted to create a niche for yourself, because that's what you did, right, in emceeing?
Well, what I wanted to do, and as you know, there wasn't a lot of room for Latino comics when we started. There was George and Paul, and we had to start doing shows in bars or in fundraisers or some sort. That's what we had to work out, learn our craft. So when we started, we convinced the clubs that there's a market, and when they saw the numbers coming in, then they realized, oh, there is a market. But to do that, somebody had to host it, somebody had to produce the show, somebody had to book the comics, and so that's what I did. And I did it a couple of times, and after that, it just continued to go. And now I've been at the ISOs 20 years doing that. And in the midst of that, there have been comics that have come and gone. There have been comics that have gone to great success. There was a 19-year-old kid that came and was doing cartoon voices. Little chubby kid, and now he's traveling worldwide. And
got a series.
Millionaire's got a series now.
That's right. So, Gabriel Iglesias. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So there's been a number of comics that have gone on to big success, and I'm not saying I'm because of me, but
you gave a platform for us to be able to work and have time, not a couple of minutes, but to be able to work out the material, bring it back, and not get penalized.
Right, absolutely.
All these bars and restaurants and clubs that you really got up in there and got spots for our community to not only hone our craft, but to have Latino audiences come and feel part of it.
Yeah, because they could relate to the comedy now. It was good in a sense because, like I said, there was a market. I mean, business-wise, if you're a club owner and you're in the middle of the San Gabriel Valley, where you're surrounded by Latinos and you don't have any Latinos on your show, something's wrong. So when they realized that, and us, we show up. We'd show up with everybody. It's like a wedding. You invite you and 10 other people to go with you. So yeah, it was cool. It was great. And then celebrities started popping in because we had so many people. So celebrity comics.
Because the rooms were always hot and are always hot. Yes.
And they would be popping in, and people you never thought. Roseanne popped in. Louie Anderson. I mean, I'm not dropping names, but I'm saying people of that caliber were showing up. And what are you doing here on a Tuesday? I said, well, we heard this room is hot, man. So I said, yeah, it is, So so we would do that, man, and it's been great.
The casinos.
The casinos too.
Yes, that was a wonderful room. By the way,
that was great.
Actually, in that room was the first time that I saw George Lopez hold the audience hostage for an hour and just wipe them out. I mean, when he was done, everybody needed to
Everybody
go
went home. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was
including the comics.
it was over. Yeah, it was like I can't follow that.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was he just like bam, 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 like a machine, like a comedy machine gun. That's the beauty of what you've brought. Is that you have brought all these people into the rooms that they come in and they feel loved and they get to
Yeah.
do their stuff. So
That's the idea.
thank you, Rudy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rudy.
You're welcome.
So what is it about emceeing that you love?
Well, emceeing, I don't have to stick to a set. I can work on the crowd. I can talk about topical stuff. If I'm bombing, I can bring up the next comic, you know. So it's just a fun thing to do. It's just because you get to do different stuff every week. Because if you have the same people coming back, you know I'll be doing the same stuff. So
Now, did you have a comedy mentor walking you through emceeing?
no, Gilbert and I were doing these rooms in the neighborhoods because we couldn't get into the clubs. So we started doing these rooms, you know, like Black Angus or some, you know. We always joke about doing comedy at a Pollo Loco soon. That's all. We honed our skills. So Gilbert and I would say, well, what do you think? You should do this. I'll do it like this and do it like that. That's how we developed the hosting thing. We would run into different guys like Fraser Smith that had been doing it like at the Laugh Factory and stuff like that, and then compare notes. But other than that, you know, we're just goofy guys.
What comics have inspired you or taught you something?
Oh, well, I'm old school, man. I grew up with Richard Pryor, George Carlin. You know, there's now being in this business so many years, I've listened to so many different guys that are pretty clever. Louie Anderson he wasn't somebody that I was aware of because of his style, but guys like that. And as far as learning locally, I toured with George for a while, and George taught me a lot about being on time, dressing correctly, doing your time, don't go over it, respecting the light, respecting your other comics.
Can you say that again?
Respecting the other comics, respecting the light. There's a thing in a club. If you have 90 minutes for a show and you're supposed to do 20, and the next guy has so much and you do 40, and you're going to cut this guy's time down, and then maybe even the last guy won't even get up. Those little things that you got to learn in the business. So George taught me a lot. Gilbert Esquivel was the one that was very inspiring. And guys like Larry Omaha, remember Larry?
Oh, I love Larry.
Yeah, those guys took the time to say, no, look, man, you can't do that. You know, it's like this. Why not? Because, and then they explain it to you. So,
Who is Gilbert Esquivel?
Gilbert Esquivel is probably one of the nicest guys in the business. I met Gilbert at a church gig. They had hired him, somebody hired him, somebody hired me. And everybody there had cowboy hats and the big belts and the boots. And we thought, man, nobody speaks English here. I said, you do yours in Spanish? He goes, no, man, you going to do yours in Spanish? I go, well, you know, whatever works, right? So we flipped the coin. He said, you lost, you're up first, dog. So he went up there and he tried his best Spanish, and they weren't having it. They were nothing. So he says, it's all yours, man. So I went up there, and the first thing I said, does anybody speak English? They all raised their hand. Yeah, we speak English. Oh, okay. So then, you know, so we became the best of friends. We recorded a DVD together.
And we could get the DVD where? On Amazon?
I don't know if you can find it anymore.
Oh, okay.
It's been a few years. So,
Okay.
we could probably find it on Amazon. And he's just a very spirited guy. He's a religious man. He's just funny. He's just funny, and he's a good man, a good family man. Takes care of his kids.
Clean. Always worked clean.
Always clean.
Always worked clean.
And,
one of the few.
Yeah, and just kills it every time. Mm-hmm. You know, Gil's a bad dude. You know.
Yeah.
So we've become really good friends because we've had so many things in common. You know, family, areas where we lived, history, and you get to bond with somebody like that. So I've had the pleasure of knowing him for many years. So.
How did you get into the Ice House? Because you've had a wonderful partnership with them.
Right.
You have been consistent in bringing in an audience for
Correct.
20 years.
Right. Well, like I said, when we started doing stuff, there wasn't a venue for Latino comedy. A lot of Latino comics. They're coming from all over, man. New York. Luke Torres was coming from Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. A lot of people from the Southwest, East Coast were coming. When I went and spoke with Sean Sullivan, who was the GM over at the Ice House, we were having lunch, and I go, hey, man, we need a Latino night. And I hated to do it like that because it just seemed like it was just pigeonholed for Latinos. He goes, well, we'll try it. He says, well, I'll give you 30 days, man. I said, well, dude, you don't understand. We are surrounded here. This is like the Alamo, dude. I said, you're surrounded by Latinos in San Gabriel Valley. You need to give them an outlet, a venue to come to. So he says, okay, let's try it. So we tried it, and 30 days turned into 20 years. So in those 20 years, we have proven to the fact that there's a market for Latinos, and not only Latinos. We changed the name from Latino Night to the Wednesday Night Live, because now I'm not just booking Latin comics, I'm booking everybody, of every color, every creed, every race,
And you're wonderful that way.
Well, thank you.
I mean, even with Latino Night, you were wonderful. You would bring Sherri Shepherd into the room. I mean, you brought in a lot of non-Latinos into the room.
Right, absolutely. Because I mean, funny's funny, man. Funny is funny, and it doesn't matter. I have a picture in my office of comics standing outside the Ice House. There's an African American, there's an American Indian, there's a Mexican, there's a gay man, there's a black man, there's a white comic, and nobody looks at the picture and says, "Hey, there's a black man, there's a white guy." And nobody says it. They just say, "There's a bunch of comics," and that's the beauty of comedy, because none of that matters. So when they said, "Well, we got to keep it Latino Night," I said, "Well, no. First of all, people are going to think it's in Spanish, and none of us speak Spanish well, and secondly, you're just giving us just a small radius of people. So let's open that up." And so we did, and it's been successful. You don't do 20 years without it being good. They wanted to say, well, maybe we shouldn't let it run that long. And then we were trying to stop it at 16, and people were like, no, man, you got to keep doing it. And we had people like George come in, and Russell Peters and Arsenio showed up. He said, we want to keep this going. So I thought, where'd you guys come from? So it was a good support.
Yes.
So,
what are some of the good things that you've gotten out of stand-up that kind of anchors you?
Well, I've been fortunate enough to use stand-up as a vehicle to either provide funds for a charity or do some good with it. Not just, hey, come see me and let me tell jokes and you pay me money. I've been able to take this and go, look, Lydia, we're doing this thing for this charity over here, or this person needs some money, or let's do a fundraiser, let's put on a show and get this money and give it to these people because they can't pay their rent, or they're going to lose their house, or hospital bills.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, medical.
Hospital. A lot of comics, the bad thing about comedy, like you started off, there is no 401k, there is no health benefits. You're self-employed, you got to figure it out. And so many comics that we've had in the circle have died from cancer and needed financial help.
Right, and it also comes back to me because a few years ago my wife was very sick with the rheumatoid arthritis, and the medical bills were crazy. I talked to a few guys, and some of the guys took it upon themselves to raise some money to do a GoFundMe thing, and Latinos we want to work for our money, not necessarily, hey man, give me money. We never heard of GoFundMe or anything. Paul Rodriguez says we're comics. If one falls, we all come running, and they did. It was a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. Awesome. But that's the power of community, right?
Yeah. They all showed up and taking turns, and I'll host for you. Don't worry, man. Stay home and stuff. And it was great. So that's one of the more beautiful things that have happened out of comedy. And we do a toy drive. My wife and I and my kids now and my grandkids now put everybody to work. We started when I started in '91. And we started doing these comedy shows and raising toys to underprivileged kids in the neighborhood. Well, this thing's just blown up, man. I mean, we're going on 28 years this year.
Wow.
And now we get involved with Pat Prescott and the Wave and Talaya Trigueros, and they've come through, and then we've got now people sponsoring the show. So now we're not only sending toys, we're sending money to these charities or Children's Hospital and shelters and stuff like that. So now it's become a big business.
And do you have a 501(c)(3)?
Yes.
We'll put the link below, or the information below, so you can donate if you feel the need. What is one of your most favorite memories of doing stand-up?
I think when I did the Coliseum, they told me it was a car show, and they told me some guy named Ice Cube was going to be there. I had no idea who he was, and I do this in my act. Ice Cube brought 50,000 people to the Coliseum, and I had just done maybe, I don't know, Black Angus, and did comedy in front of 30 people, and I get there and I said, well, where's the car show? No, this is it, man. You're next. Next what? He says, you're next. You go up, and then we're going to bring out Ice Cube. So I go backstage, and I forget his name's Ice Cube, and I call him Ice Cream. I call him Ice Cream, and he gets mad at me. And he's, who are you, man? So I go out there, and there's the Coliseum, man. It's huge. So I went out there, and I figured if I make half of them laugh, fine. So I had a decent set and stuff. And so he came up and said, you done good, dog. And okay. And that was probably one of the highlights, you know. And then meeting Carlos Santana, that was the other one. And I wasn't working or nothing like that. I just happened to be backstage with a friend of mine, and Carlos was there. And that to me, he's bigger than life to me, man. So I never been starstruck, but I stuttered like crazy, man. I was like, you know, so. But that was one of the cool.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Now, what about Cheech Marin?
Oh, Cheech Marin. We do you remember the Latino Laugh Festival? It was
Absolutely.
in San Antonio.
Yes.
They had every celebrity, every Latino celebrity, almost, and everybody else was there. So Cheech was one of the hosts, and Daisy Fuentes.
One of the original MTV
Yeah.
VJs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cheech Marin was there, and he was the host, and he came up to us, the comics that were there, and just said, "Hey guys, how's it going?" Blah blah blah. We were stunned. You know, this is Cheech Marin, man. You know, 20 years passed. I do a gig for an art show that he's doing.
He's a wonderful artist.
Right, and he's
Wonderful.
supporting Latino artists, and he opened up this museum in Riverside. So he said, "We want you to host this thing for Cheech Marin." And I was like, "Oh my God," you know. So I walked up to him, and why would he remember me? Right. So I go, "Cheech, I worked with you at the Latino Laugh Fest." He goes, "Yeah, Moreno, right? Rudy Moreno." So somebody fed him some notes. I don't even remember my name. You know, just the nicest guy in the world. You know, and a class act.
He's giving back.
Yeah, he's giving back to Latino artists. And that's one of the things I remember you used to always tell us, you got to support the home team, support your Latino. It's not going to happen unless we make it happen.
That's right.
You know, so if you have a chance to go and support a play, a comedy show, a group, you know, a TV show, whatever it is, do it. And
Yes.
I've always taken that advice to heart, thanks to you, and I've done it.
That's the beauty of who you are, is that you have always been a support to people. When we were doing the Hot and Spicy Mamitas, you were the first to give us a stage to do our show. First of all, 5 Latina women. Nobody wanted us.
No, it was a great
Nobody
show.
wanted us.
It was a
but
great
the
show.
truth was, nobody wanted us. And so to play rooms that you were doing, you were hosting and you were producing in, helped us. We would figure out who the MC was going to be for that night. And if they took too long on stage, the audience turned on them.
Right,
Because
right,
we
right.
don't want to see you, we want the mamitas.
Right, I remember
So you were one of the first people, if not the first, to give us that opportunity.
Right.
You know, and I just think, you know, as Latinos in the business, it is our responsibility to help everybody.
Absolutely.
You know, well, not everybody. Let me take that. I ain't helping everybody. But to help people who really have the talent, have the drive, and are good. You
Right.
know, that you want to champion young people. You want to champion people who, they just need the door to be open.
Right. That's what I tell young comics. You have to be passionate about this. It's not a thing to go show off to your friends.
And responsible.
Absolutely.
You have to be responsible. If someone gives you the opportunity, you have to not make them out to be, you know, bad. I shouldn't have done this, you know, because don't give them regrets. Why
Right.
did I help this person?
Right.
They just burned me.
And I always tell young comics, John Wooden, who was a coach at UCLA, he said something that's always stuck with me. He says, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And I tell my students this because, like any job, you have to prepare yourself, man. You have to have your stuff ready so when opportunity knocks and you're there, you're ready to go. It's not like, oh, well, can I have 2 more days before I go up? No, we want you here now. It was funny, one time, George Lopez had a show called Lopez Tonight, talk show. Not a lot of guys were on that show, the comics. There's more celebrities and stuff. But he called one day, his people called and said, George wants you here tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Well, tomorrow for what? You want me to sweep? What do you know? So says, no, he wants you to come and do a 5-minute set. So I had been doing it enough years to know I have 5 minutes. So when I got there, I did the 5 minutes. But it was just one of those examples of be ready.
Right.
Be ready. If you're an actor, you know, take acting lessons. It's okay you've been on a TV show already and you've done that. Just keep your chops, you know?
What would you like to do in the next 5 years?
Rob a bank. No,
He's
not
kidding.
kidding.
He's kidding people.
Comedy. I think I would like to produce shows. I'm getting to the age now and the time where, you know, some of these things, like I don't go on the road anymore because it's just tiring for me.
What do you want to produce?
Comedy shows or big shows, music and comedy.
Okay.
And maybe at some point even consider doing, selling it to television or something.